welcome back to What the Fertility. Today we are so excited. We have Shelby Lee with us, and Kat and I are actually in person together, which is so crazy. We are so excited that Shelby's here. She's going to be talking about her fertility treatments that she's been through. She actually was an IVF nurse as well, and everything that led to the adoption of her daughter. So thank you so much for being here, Shelby.
Yes, thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited.
We're excited to kind of get to know you and learn your journey a bit more. So we'll give you the floor, I guess, kind of when you met your husband and when you guys started to walk down this journey of unfortunately infertility.
Yeah, of course. So I met my husband when we were in high school. We are technically like high school sweethearts, but just like the tail end of high school. So we met when I was 17. We were both 17, but he was a senior and I was a junior. And yeah, that was back in 2011 that we first met. And so we broke up one time. Um, and it was only for like 3 months. So my husband's like, was it even a breakup? Was it even? I was like, sure, whatever you want to think. But yeah, so we did long distance for a while. My husband played baseball in college. So he played baseball in Alabama and then eventually went to Charleston Southern actually and lived in Charleston for a while. And so I just took my dog and I along the road constantly to go see him, to go watch him play. And then eventually he moved back to where we're from, which is Georgia. And we spent about another year apart before we decided to finally move in together. And then we got engaged in 2016, and then got married in 2017. And we were just kind of like, you know what? We don't really want kids right now. Like we want to enjoy actually being together for the first time, like not in the first time, but like we're married, we get to now experience married life. Like we don't necessarily want a child right now. We want to wait just a little bit because we got married young. We were 21, 22. So we were
Oh,
like,
Oh,
wow.
yeah.
yeah, we have plenty of time. And which is so funny because people that didn't know us thought we were getting married because of like a shotgun wedding. And we were like, no. We're just like, we've been apart for so long. We want to be married. We want to just live our lives. Um, so we sure enough did that. We stayed where we were at and then kind of moved a little bit closer to home. Decided we were going to use this like new construction home, kind of fix it up. And then eventually we'll get into the realm of children. And so 2019 is kind of when we were like, you know what? Let's stop actively preventing, not necessarily trying, but not preventing. And at the time, I worked in an OBGYN in women's health. Um, and so I kind of had a little bit of a background of fertility, but it really wasn't that. It was more along the lines of like pregnancies, STDs, pap smears, colposcopies, all that fun stuff. So didn't really know didn't know anything. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't think it's going to be easy. I just don't think somehow I knew deep down, I was like, I just don't think it's going to be easy for us. And so halfway through 2019, nothing was happening. And I was like, okay, so let me just try and start like doing the ovulation testing. Like, let me get a little bit more serious about it. Did that for a few months and still nothing was happening. And when you work in the healthcare industry, nothing is ever a secret. You don't have TMI. You don't have like, oh, that's kind of like a taboo subject. No. Everybody in that office knew that I was trying to have a baby. Everybody was like, your period, so you're going to ovulate on these days.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So,
I think it occurs because they can like give you so much information, but then you're like, oh my God.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was like me and my husband are trying, but also me and my whole office are also trying to have a child.
Literally.
So my doctor that I worked for at the time was like, let's test your progesterone just to check and see if you're ovulating. And it was super low. It was only like a 3, which is still ovulatory, but it's not like what it should be. And so she was like, here's some Clomid, give it a shot. I said, okay. And my friend that took it had twins, and she was like, you're going to have triplets. And I was like, let's not put that in the universe, shall we? No, that's stressful. And so, and still in the back of my mind, I was like, it's just not going to work for me. I don't know why, but I just don't think it's going to work. And I took it and I worked at an OBGYN office. So I went and did ultrasounds and had beautiful follicles, ovulated gorgeously, nothing happened. And that continued on for 7 months.
Oh my goodness.
7 months of Clomid.
Text Clomid for 7 months. And anybody that's taken Clomid knows that it makes you psycho. I was psycho for 7 months.
Oh no.
And you're still like mid-20s at this point, right?
Yeah.
I'm still mid-20s at this point. So everybody's like, why? You're so young. That's the worst thing I ever heard. You're so young. I'm like, thank you. I realize that. So 7 months, I was crazy. And at the end of that 7 months, my doctor was finally like, let's do an HSG. Let's do a semen analysis. Let's just make sure like nothing's going on. I don't think it is. I think it's just like the timing isn't right or something like that. And I was like, okay. So I did the HSG. That's the most painful thing, of course, you've ever done in your life. And tubes were fine. Tubes were wide open. My husband did a semen analysis. His numbers weren't horrible. They were kind of suboptimal. But nothing that granted him needing to see a urologist. We went ahead and let him see one, but he was like, yeah, you're fine. There's no reason for you to be on Clomid. You don't have zero sperm. It's fine. So that is around the time the pandemic hit. And I ended up changing jobs. And so we decided to take a break, just kind of stop the medication because like I said, I was crazy. I was crying in the middle of Cracker Barrels.
Oh no.
The dumbest thing. That was like the peak of the craziness was like a waiter came over and was like, is she okay? And my husband was like, she's fine. She's fine.
Oh my God.
She's fine. She's on Clomid. It's okay.
She's fine. Just like give her a second.
Yeah, like Clomid is basically a hormone,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah. Yeah, so my hormones were wild, just wild. Like compared to IVF, which I ended up doing, walk in the park compared to my 7 months of Clomid. Yes, didn't have as I did cry like a couple of random times during my IVF cycle, but I wasn't like mood swinging. I had hot flashes on Clomid. I was nauseated. I was just every side effect you could have with Clomid, I had it.
Gosh, and like going through all that and trying to have a baby,
Yeah.
like all the moods that come with like getting your period every month. Oh my gosh.
And just like obviously living life and like having to go to work. Like I can't imagine having
my
a
sweet
patient
coworker that I had worked for with so long. One day, I think she just said the wrong thing to me, and I just saw red. I couldn't talk to her, and then the next day I came in and she was like, "Are you in a better mood?" And I just sobbed. I was like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you upset." She was like, "I'm fine. Are you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know. Am I okay?" But
so you like stopped the Clomid and you changed jobs and you decided to take a break. How long did you guys take a break for?
So I stopped Clomid in June of 2020, got my new job in July, and restarted everything in February. So that whenever you change jobs, especially into a specialty, so I ended up, I applied like tons of places. I applied at plastic surgery. I applied at more OBGYNs. Then I was like, you know what? I really think the whole infertility aspect, not to say it's cool, but it's very interesting. The science behind it, the fact that people get pregnant anyway, there's only like a 30% chance that you get pregnant.
Right.
That's mind blowing. So how are people out here just getting like, 19 kids and counting?
Yes.
Literally.
There's a whole industry of infertility on the back end, and it's just fascinating to me. So I applied at my clinic that I ended up working for, and I went in for an interview, and they were just phenomenal. And I told them kind of what I knew on the like just surface level. And they were like, it's fine. You will go through a 3-month training process before you do anything. And sure enough, that's what I did. And that just was also so eye-opening because whenever you're on the surface level of infertility, you really just don't know everything. And then I am on that surface level, but also I'm getting trained to be the in-depth level. So you get open to a world of egg donors, sperm donors, embryo donation, surrogacy. You've got lawyers involved, and you've got psychologies you've got to go through. You've got all of the test results that could mean this, but that could mean that. You've got a high FSH and how to bounce it down with estrogen. I mean, I was like, information overload.
Did that make it like more, did you feel like that made it more inclusive, knowing there was so many people going through so many different things? Or was it just more overwhelming of like, oh my gosh, all these things could be wrong with me?
So I think I've always been like very good to separate myself from other situations. So in the back of my mind, I was just kind of like, wow, this is very interesting. But I never took myself and made a parallel of like, do I have eggs? Do I have severe endometriosis and I'm going to need a surrogate? So I never really like meshed myself into it. I was super good about not comparing myself. I only compared myself one time, and it was right after my failed IVF cycle. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. I only did it one time, and I think that one time was just because I had a lot of rush of emotions, and it was an unfortunate situation where a person was just like, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. I only have one embryo. I'm the worst case in this clinic. Like, nobody is worse off than me. Poor, pitiful me. My one embryo is normal, but it's a certain gender, and I didn't want that gender. And I was just, my IVF cycle had just failed. And I was like, ma'am, truly, there are worse people. Like, people are worse off. I promise you. I promise. Like,
wow.
Yeah. Not. No, there's not. There's not. And I snapped and I said, you know what? It's me.
I'm the one.
Off. And I was like, I've been through the same thing. And guess what? I didn't get any embryos. And that lady just got dead silent and was like, oh, okay.
Dang.
And
Like, that is wild. Like, yeah, realize we're all humans, even though like you're like working there, like that's just wild that she had like no filter. And
no, and that's very rare. It's like, I have the nurse I used to work with, she used to be an oncology nurse, and she said that oncology patients are so kind because they just live life to the fullest.
Yeah.
IVF and infertility patients are very similar into that way, in the fact that they know that it's so hard to get this one thing that you want so bad. And so they really are very kind to the people that are trying to help them. But at the same time, we're dealing with ladies on hormones.
Right. Yeah, right. True. Yeah.
Like, you got to give grace where it can be. But at the same time, you also have to understand when people are just taking it a little too far and they're just trying to gain sympathy where sympathy is already given to you, but now you're just trying to go overboard and you're trying to take advantage of the people that are trying to help you. So
right. Okay, well, it sounds like you're perfect for that job and that role, because I would have been comparing every single thing I saw.
It would not have been healthy for me.
So
I don't know how I didn't. I look back on it and I'm like, should I have been there during this time? But like, whenever I was in my job, I did not look at myself as
that's so cool.
Like, as a person going through it as well.
Yeah.
Definitely used my experiences to help people go along. So and first off, we did like nurse consults to try to teach people about IVF. And so I would say, listen, I've done this too. So anything that you're going through, I've probably gone through. So just know you can come and talk to me about what you're feeling. I can sympathize with you, and I will know what you're feeling because I've walked your shoes too.
I love that.
Actually, the craziness, because I was like, you can't top my crazy. And I would have women call me and just be like, I think I'm going nuts. And I'm like, no. I'll tell you nuts.
Yeah.
I'd tell them the Cracker Barrel story, of course. And they'd be like, oh, it's not that bad. And I was like, it's not, is it?
That's awesome. So you do your training period. I feel like you're really focused on that. And again, you've like kind of taken your own journey out of it. So then when you start trying again in 2021, you're with this IVF clinic. Are you like, okay, maybe we should try IUI and like start like actually trying?
Yeah. So, fun fact, just about everybody that worked at my clinic also went through IVF, IUI, probably I would say about 70%.
Wow.
That's insane. That's high.
So, the ultrasound techs. She was one of like, she was an OG patient way back when, and she got twins out of it. But my nurse educator got twins out of a Femara cycle. So it's just like, you don't realize like how many people you come across that does go through IVF, and especially the people that you work with. So it had been in the back of my mind where I was like, okay, I feel very comfortable where I'm at. Like, I feel like I could easily do treatment alongside of me working. And so my husband and I were like, in the new year, we're going to make an appointment with one of our doctors that I work with. And, we're going to see what she has to say. So I made an appointment, and it was kind of the same. You're young, you're healthy, your AMH is good, your husband's sperm is fine. Like, why aren't you getting pregnant? Maybe you just need a little help. Maybe you just need a little help with the sperm getting to the egg.
Yeah.
So that's where an IUI came into play. That was our plan. And so we switched from Clomid to Femara because I had a higher AMH. It was like 7-ish. And she was like, I think Femara will work better for you with quality versus quantity, because the Clomid, I was getting like 2 or 3 follicles that were just really big. And she was like, I really just want 1 or 2 at this point that are good quality. So I was like, okay. So I did 1 IUI, and my husband's sperm sample was just horrible. We like to see above 10 million sperm in that IUI specimen, and his was below 5 million. So I was like, oh no, like, is there something going on that maybe like we're not aware of? And my husband is super active. He does CrossFit, he eats properly, he does all these things. So I was like, he's not doing anything that like would make his sperm be so low.
Right.
So we went ahead and did the IUI, and it didn't work. So we did another semen analysis for him. Turns out fine. It was just like a fluke day.
Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So
That's been pretty hard.
yeah. So she was like, let's do another one. And I was like, okay. And I had already told myself 2 is the max. I'm not going to go more than 2, because I had seen it. I had seen people who were like, let's do another, let's do another, let's do another. And the chance doesn't continuously go up till you get to 100% chance of pregnancy with this IUI.
Right.
So I was like, I'm not going to do that. That's silly. So I did another one, and it still didn't work. And I was like, okay, we're going to just pause. This was in March. We're going to pause, and we're going to do IVF towards the end of this year. And so that way I had a big discount to do it, thankfully, but
I was going to ask you, I'm like, do you get perks at least?
Yeah. Yeah. So like the IUIs were next to nothing. And, the IVF, however long you're at the clinic, is what your discount is. So if you're there for like 3 or 4 plus years, it's free.
Yeah.
But if you're there for less than that, then it's like, oh, you get this amount of discount, and then this amount of discount, and this amount of discount. So I think I didn't have to pay for any medication. The drug reps that I had made relationships with were so helpful, and they sent me all of my drugs, which those suckers. And so that's what I decided to do. And unfortunately, 2021 was like a banner year, where my father-in-law passed away from COVID in September, excuse me. And then my dog of 10 years got cancer.
Oh no.
Right after it. He's alive. He's good. He's kicking. He's out there right now. But then just preference, no dogs died. But it was like, now we're going through a whole journey of grief on top of trying to have a child. And the grief was mixed with guilt for me, because I was like, it's my fault that your dad's never going to meet his grandchild now. And so I had to go through all of that.
Wow.
And so whenever he passed away, I was like, should we just not do it now? Like, this is a lot of emotions. This is a lot of things to process. Like, why would we? Because in my mind, IVF was going to work. It was all of my eggs were in that basket. That was dumb, but all of my eggs were in that basket. And so I was like, what a like crazy thing to be happy about whenever we've just lost someone so important.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I talked with my mother-in-law and she was like, I think that you should still do it. Like we need something like positive. And I was like, okay, like we'll still do it.
Yeah.
So November, we decided to get started and I had a textbook perfect IVF cycle. My estrogen went great. I got 50 follicles. So 25, 25.
Amanda and I are over here like under 10.
I'm like, could you imagine?
That is
Oh my
text.
Felt
That-
like a chicken ready to lay eggs. I was like waddling by the end of it. I was
Oh,
like,
I literally can't even imagine. Yeah.
I was so uncomfortable that last ultrasound. I was like, if you press too hard, something's gonna pop. Something's gonna
Wow.
pop. I don't know what it will be, but you will pop something.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, and I videoed the whole thing. I mean, I videoed all my shots. I videoed all these things, you know, because in my mind, I'm like, it's gonna work, and I get to show my child this one day, and it's gonna be so cool. And I had videos from my friend in the lab who's an embryologist of her seeing the eggs, and I had it all. And so, come the surgery day, everything went great. I got what was it? 42 eggs. I know you're like, how does this go
Wait,
bad? How does this
yeah.
go?
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah, I got a lot. I literally was like, I am a chicken. I laid all
Like, I
of
made a
the
lot of
eggs.
eggs.
So they gave me the sheet to show me like what I had, and I was like, great, this is great. And I went home that day just resting, and I was a workaholic, I'm not gonna lie. So I would check my emails constantly just to make sure nothing needed my attention right away. So I checked my email later that day, and it was an email from the embryologist, and it had CC'd my doctor and my doctor's nurse. And it was like, her eggs are such poor quality. They're bad.
Wait, were you supposed to be on the email?
Yeah. I was
Okay.
on, yeah. So it didn't say that necessarily,
Right.
But like
That's
you
what
knew what they were
That's
saying.
what you took
Yeah.
from it. Yeah.
So out of that 42, I got to remember if I get these numbers right, only 4 that first day
Wow.
were able to be fertilized. And then the following day, they were able to check again and get 3 more. So 7 out of 42 were only able to be fertilized.
Okay, so I'm thinking from my experience, PCOS, did that come into play at all?
Yeah, so that's where, because originally the only thing that would have indicated PCOS was my high AMH. Other
Right.
than that, I don't have like, I mean, I have acne, but you know, who doesn't? But I don't have any crazy PCOS symptoms.
Well, and 7 AMH, while it's high, it's not like off the charts.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen one that was like 26 before.
Yes.
Really?
I know. I was like,
Mine was like 1.4 like 2 years ago. It's probably in the bucket now.
I'm honestly negative. There's no eggs left. Like it's like 0.00000. It's fine.
So
Everything's fine.
technically, you're supposed to have 3 symptoms to technically be able to diagnose PCOS. So you have your AMH, and at this point, I had infertility, so I only had 2. That poor egg quality was my 3rd symptom.
Oh wow!
So poor, which you would have never known unless you do IVF. You don't know.
Well, how unique to almost get a diagnosis after like half of your IVF treatment.
Yeah. So, I had 7 embryos, and at that point, I was already like, none of them are going to make it. In my mind, like everybody was like, it only takes 1, and I was like, oh yeah. I say that too. Trust me, I know this speech.
Yeah.
It only takes 1. So that whole week, only like a couple of people in my family knew, and halfway through it, I knew that there was only 1 embryo left. So the other 6 had already stopped growing, or been discarded because of the poor quality XYZ. So at that point, I was already just like, it's not going to happen. And the day that I knew, so you have the embryos reach blast on day 5, 6, 7, and I was on day 7 at that point. So I was like, I know they know by now. They know.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to get the phone call from my doctor because I knew I was going to lose it. I needed to lose it separately and come back to her and be like, okay, what the heck?
Yeah.
So I called my friend, who was my nurse educator, biggest cheerleader, all the things. And I said, I need you to tell me before she calls me, because I know she's going to look as soon as she gets in, and I can't have her be the one to tell me. And she looked and she like walked away and she was crying and she was like, it didn't make it. And I was like, okay, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And I'm just like, I'm at work. She's at work.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine.
I'm in like a exam room and I'm just like sobbing. And I was like, I just need you to be on the phone. Let me get it out and I'll be okay. I'll be okay. I just need to get this out. And because at that point, most of my doctors knew that I was going through IVF. And I knew that they were going to be sad for me. And so I didn't want every hug and, oh my gosh, are you okay? For me to just like not be okay. And so I got it out and my doctor called and she told me and she was like, let's like talk whenever you get home with your husband tonight. And I was like, that's fine. And sure enough, all throughout the day, my doctor was like, did your embryo make it? And I was like, no, it didn't. And he was like, I'm so sorry. My, other friends that worked at the clinic was like, what happened? And I told them, and they were, of course, so apologetic. And it definitely helped that I was like, let me get this out of the way before I have to tell everybody that, no, it did not work.
Right.
Which is like a crazy rare situation. You don't see it all the time that you've got 42 eggs and no embryos at all. So
that's a roller coaster of you get out of the egg retrieval, you're like, oh, I'm 100% gonna have embryos, and then to end where you ended. That's really typically you're just like Amanda and I, and you get bad news from day one. Literally, you're like, it's not gonna work out.
Well, going back to like comparing, my friend that I had talked with that told me the bad news, she went through an IVF cycle at the exact same time I did. And we had almost exact same AMHs. Our IVF cycles were almost the exact same. And she got almost the exact same number of eggs as well. And I think her embryo count at the end was like 26, 20. And so
probably thinking like, okay.
Yeah, she was one day ahead of me. So I knew what her results were before mine.
Oh, that's hard.
That's so hard.
Yeah. And so when she called me crying, she was like, I'm sorry. I was like, why are you sorry? And she was like, because mine
works.
Right. Like, that's not your fault. Like, we're two different people, even though you have situations like ours where it's parallel, that things look the exact same. You can't compare. So she was upset because hers essentially it had worked for her, and
which I think you see like in this infertility community, you get so close to people, you're often going through the same cycles at the same time, and then people don't even know how to like handle those friendships once people get different, because everybody gets different results. And you're like, of course, how do we navigate through this? Because one friend probably doesn't want to watch the other person then be pregnant. It's a whole thing.
So I got on the phone with my doctor that night and with my husband. And my husband's a very black and white person. He wants to know why and what are you going to do to fix it? And unfortunately, infertility is not white, and this is how you can fix it. It's so gray. It's the grayest industry you'll ever see. And so as soon as she got on, he was like, why? And I was like, no. You're not going to get an answer. So she was like, what we can do is we can go back at it at a different way and do it like this. And my husband was like, is it going to change the result? I don't know.
They're all going to say, I don't know.
You have no idea.
It was similar.
Yeah. And in my mind, I was just like, you know what? Okay, like let's do it. We're ready for another cycle. But at this point, my father-in-law had passed away. My dog had cancer. I had a failed IVF cycle. Let's stop the bad news for this year and just restart in the new year.
Yeah.
'Cause I was like, I can't take another bad thing happening, or else I will lose my mind.
Yeah.
So she was like, okay, so in January, once the holidays are over, like we'll restart. And so I was like, okay, that sounds good to me. Um, and my husband like hadn't really said anything at that point. He was just kind of like, I don't understand why they can't tell us why this is happening and what they can do to fix it. And I was like, that's just how it is, buddy. Like, I don't know how to explain else to you, but like it's science, but it's not an exact science. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I mean, it's like creating a human being, like you said
Yeah.
earlier. Like it's the fact that we can even become pregnant in the first place is so
insane.
wild. And then when
Yeah.
you do infertility, you're like, wow, it's even crazier that this works like naturally. And
Yeah.
time for some
Literally.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, it was the end of November that this happened, and December was hard just because it was the first Christmas without my father-in-law. So a lot of us, as far as the family, kind of just dealt with it on our own. So we really weren't coming together that year. But at that point in my mind, I was like, maybe I should try egg donation. Maybe I should try embryo donation. I was going a million miles a minute. And I also wanted opinions from my other doctors. And so I had one doctor saying to change the protocol to do this. One doctor was like, you should keep it the same, but do this. And another one was like, you should add in a sperm donor. So it was across the board, just different opinions. And I was just going a million miles a minute. And then in my head, I was like, is it so important that I get pregnant? Is that really the most important thing to me? Or am I trying to start a family? Am I trying to have a child that me and my husband love and care for and grow and help into the world? And so whenever I was having those thoughts, I was like, I had knew people that had adopted, but nothing that was, so personal that I could be like, hey, you want to tell me what your thoughts were? So I started Googling, which is like the worst thing you can do. Um, I just started Googling things, and unbeknownst to me, my husband was doing the exact same thing, but we just weren't
Really? Like
telling each other.
other.
Yeah, so we were trying to do it separately because we were both unsure about it. But in our minds, we were kind of like, is that maybe our calling at this point? Like, is that maybe like what Jesus is calling us to do? And because in my mind, so many people that do IVF, sometimes you got to do it 4 or 5 times to
Yeah.
actually.
I mean,
So,
Shelby, it's so wild. Like after our first failed IVF cycle, like we were gifted a free second round. It sounds like you could have done it at a really reduced rate. And like
yeah,
I had the exact thought process of you of like, what is my goal here? Like, is it really to be pregnant and have biological children? No, it's really not at all.
Yeah.
You said it perfectly. Like that's so interesting. Because like,
so
yeah, I was the same thing. A lot of people think like adoption is just like that's the choice that people make once they've exhausted other women that have gone through infertility. That's an option after they exhausted. But I think for you and even like me, that was not at all the case.
no, and it was like of course, like I could have done as many rounds as I wanted, honestly. My doctors would have been like, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. Do egg donation, do embryo donation. I mean, I had joined Facebook groups about embryo donation. I had started looking at egg donors. I was preparing to go the whole 9 yards. And then I was just like, but why? Why is it going to fulfill me to be pregnant and then be so anxious the whole 9 months if this baby even gets to the world? And then what if it doesn't? Like, what if God knows that I can't do miscarriages because I will just absolutely, it will ruin me.
Right.
So that's when I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to start looking into adoption because it's not my end goal to be pregnant. It's in my end goal to have a family and to have a baby and to be able to raise that child with my husband. So I started looking, and I initially started looking internationally because everything tells you that internationally is cheaper, but it does not tell you the lengths it takes to do international adoption.
Yeah, especially in the midst and after COVID. I had a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah. So I started looking internationally, and I finally sat down with my husband and I said, listen, I know we said in January we were going to do this, but what do you think about this? And he was like, well, funny you should say that. I've been thinking about the same thing.
That's
And I was
awesome.
like, perfect, 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 perfect. We're on the same page. And he was like, I have no idea what to do though. And I was like, don't worry, I've been researching. Don't worry.
You're like, I got this.
I started looking into more international agencies, like what it would take. And of course, like certain countries require different things. Like one country was like, you both have to come and travel and stay here for 2 months. And then one of you can go back, but the other one has to stay here for another month. Then maybe you get to go home.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And all of this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. And so at that point, I was like, okay, maybe I should do domestic. Like maybe that's the thing. And I really hadn't like made a for sure plan at that point. And I went to the dentist. This is the weirdest thing. I went to the dentist, and the dentist that we go to, they typically keep you with the same hygienist, the same doctor. I was running late. The girl that I usually go with, she was running late. So they switched us around. So I was with a different girl. And, I had just went through IVF, and IVF hormones can make your gums bleed. They're a lot more sensitive, all this stuff. So I told the girl, I was like, hey, I just did IVF. I just did all the hormones. And she was like, okay, I'll be a lot more careful. She was like, how did it go? And at that point, I was like,
Right.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I was like, it was fine. It was fine. And she kind of starts saying, well, I've had friends that have done IVF, and, it's a whole journey. And she's just kind of talking. And I'm like, yeah, of course. And she said, my parents couldn't have children, but they adopted, because back then, like, it wasn't a thing for couples to go through infertility. And I was like, yeah, of course. And she was like, so they adopted 4 of my siblings from El Salvador. And she said, and then funny enough, like, because my family had adopted, my dad was like a football coach or an insurance person or something. And somebody at Northside had a baby and didn't want me. And so the person at Northside called her dad, because they knew he had adopted, and said, do you want this child? And he said, yes. And so she said, here I am.
Oh.
And I was like,
chills, I'm sure. You're like, why am I meeting this person?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was like, what is happening? And so she like stops for a second, and I said, actually, like, my IVF cycle didn't work and I'm looking to adopt. And she said, oh my God, ask me anything. Ask me whatever you want to ask me.
Oh, cool.
That is
And I said, are you, because at that point I was so scared about the connection. Also,
Yeah.
I was like, if I adopt, like, are they going to think of me as their mom? Like, are they going to hate me? Are they going to like forever look for something that I took them away from? Because I'm an overthinker like that.
And
so,
that's all the same questions I thought.
Yeah.
yeah. So she said, I had the best life. I had the best life. And she said, I know where my birth mother is. Never felt the need to ask her. I have a half sister. I talk to her sometimes, but I grew up and my mom made me breakfast every morning, and I got to wear matching PJs on Christmas, and I got to
Why am I crying?
I was at the dentist crying.
I would be losing it, like sobbing. Like,
I was just like, I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm upset by this. And she was like, no, it's fine. And she said, no, I had the best life, and my parents have unfortunately passed away. And you would think that I would search for my birth family, and I don't feel like I need to, because they fulfilled me so much growing up that I don't need somebody that didn't want me.
wow.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah, I'd be sobbing.
I'm sure that just like solidified your desire.
Yeah.
moving
And
forward.
I told her, I was like, that's honestly like my fear is like, what if all this, like, what if this child doesn't look at me as a mom? And she said, what if she does? What if she's your whole world? And I was like, okay.
Oh, so no.
I'm like hyperventilating, and my dentist walks in, and he's like, "Are you so
You're
you guys
like, I don't have any cavities. I'm
good?"
good. See you
I'm
later.
not. And I was even like, "Do you mind me asking like how you found out you're adopted?" And she said, "Yeah, my siblings are from El Salvador." And I looked at my mom one day in the car, and I said, "Mom, why are they brown and I'm not?"
I love it.
And she was like, "Because they are," or she was like, "Because they're from El Salvador or something." And she was like, "You're not." And she was like, "Oh, okay." Took it as that. And then she went to school and a kid was like, "Hey, you're adopted." And she was like, "No, I'm not." And she said, and the kid was like, "Yeah, you are. Your siblings are brown and you're white. So you're not like you guys are." He was like, "You're adopted." And she was like, "What does that mean?" And the kid was like, "I don't know." Because they were. And so she went back to her mom and she was like, "Mom, am I adopted?" And her mom like froze and she was like, "Yes." And she was like, "Okay." And she walked away. And she said, I came back like 10 minutes later and was like, "What does that mean?"
Mhm.
And she said, she started trying to explain it. And she said, "Wait, is it kind of like when we go to the shelter and pick out a dog?" And the mom was like, "Kinda." And she was like, "So you guys wanted me specifically?" And she said, "Yeah." And so she went back to the kid and she was like, "Just so you know, your parents got stuck with you and mine chose me."
That's
Oh my God, that's
like
amazing.
And
amazing.
I was like, that is so funny. And she said, I used that for the rest of my life in school. She said, anytime somebody was, which nobody ever was like that, but she said, anytime kind of adoption got brought up, she was like, just remember, your parents were stuck with you and mine picked me.
Oh my God, I love
So
that. Wait, I hope Ben says that.
No, that's so cute.
So
That is so funny.
I went home and I like sat my husband down. I was like, listen to this crazy story. And I told him and he was crying at the end of it. And he was like, I feel like we've asked for signs, we've prayed for signs, and we just got smacked with one, just
Oh,
smacked
yeah.
one right in the face. And I was like, you're right, we did. And so a woman at my church had adopted, and I kind of reached out to her to ask questions. And I did the research on an agency versus a consultant agency versus a lawyer. And it seemed like doing a consultant agency was just like the best option because it's a lot of work, and these people kind of take half of it out of your way. And I called and did some interviews with a couple of different ones and ended up with the our faithful adoption consultants, and they were just 10 out of 10 the whole way through. I mean, I
Wait,
think
Shelby, is this how we connected? Because this was the same one. Okay, I was like, this is the same one that and are you in Georgia now?
yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah,
Awesome. I
yeah.
was so
So,
curious about how your actual unique process with adoption. Okay, so you use FAC.
yep. I to be honest, I looked through their tags and that's how I found you.
That's
And I said,
exactly what I did.
she's really pretty. Let me
Oh,
click on her.
you could say that
And
about you too.
I was like, let me click on her and see what she's doing. And so then I just went through your whole stuff and I was like, let me click on her because she's friends with this girl and see what she's
Oh,
doing. And so that's where we're at.
oh,
Uh,
I love it.
yeah. So did the home study, did the background checks, did the fingerprint checks, did all of that. So we started in January and we're active in May. And so many things set us back. I mean, we went and got family pictures done. That set us back more. Our profile book set us back a lot. Multiple things set us back. And I was constantly just like, "Ugh, it's just, we're never going to get through this paperwork. We're never going to get active. We're never going to do all this stuff." And it all happens for a reason. Every single thing that set me back, every single thing that happened for a reason because I was meant to get my daughter.
So
And
spot on. That is so,
so May comes around, we're active. My consultant was Courtney, who is the owner of FAC,
yeah.
an angel sent from heaven. She I think I sent her a message once at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And in the message, it literally read, "Do not open until you're awake." She responded at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, oh my God, this woman does not sleep. But the first like 3 weeks, we didn't get a single case. And I was like, they hate us. Nobody wants to send us anything.
It's such
We're
a
not
stressful process. Yeah.
Yeah.
For listeners, basically, and even I think you kind of know, Amanda, but like you basically are getting your cases through email, and then you have to be constantly checking your email because you have X amount of time to respond.
Oh my gosh.
And then they only sometimes will take the first 10 people that respond. And
That's
so
so
you're just
nerve-wracking.
like glued to your phone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had told my job like what was going on. So they thankfully let me I have 2 screens to work on at work. And then I have my laptop next to me open for my emails,
Yeah.
refreshing it every 5 minutes.
And doing that for 3 weeks and not getting anything to come in,
That
you're like,
is so
what's
crazy.
wrong with us?
Like, what is happening? And I even emailed Courtney. I was like, am I doing something wrong? Like, does somebody not like me? And she was like, no, it's just slow. Like, we really haven't gotten any cases. And I was like, okay, that's fine. It's not just me. Got it. And one morning,
you must have been active at the exact same time.
we were, yeah, for like a short time, we were active at the exact same time.
Yeah, because we went active the last week in January of 2022.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you were
So-
like 2 months later. Okay.
That's wild.
So one morning at like 4 o'clock in the morning, my husband wakes me up and he was like, Shelby, we got a case. And I said, hold on. And
Oh,
my husband relied heavily on me to look through everything because you get so much information
yeah.
and you have to read through it and you have to determine, is this something I'm comfortable with? Is this something that fits me? Is this something that I even want to say yes to in such a short amount of time?
And kind of being so desperate of like, am I going to get another case? What is the
Yeah.
next option going to be? Is this, it's
Is this,
so
like, the best? Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got that first case and read through it and sent our yes. And I was like, what if we get chosen? And then he was like, you're a little too like
I did
happy at the moment. Like, calm down. But he was also like, what if we get chosen? Because it was a case in Seattle. We would have had to fly across the country immediately. And so in our minds, we were like, okay, are we ready to do this? Like, we got to be ready.
And
We have
for listeners, yeah. So for listeners, how it works is like once you and your husband say yes, there's no taking that yes back. If that family also says yes, you're done. Like that is the match.
That's crazy.
And some of the cases are what they're called baby born. So that means that the baby is already here. And if you say yes, you have to jump on a plane that same day to go.
Yeah.
You have to be ready to go then and there.
So, at this point, do you like have baby stuff or no?
I have a crib.
Okay.
And that's it.
That's
and we got declined for that case. And at that point, I was like, I'm not prepared. I need to be more prepared because if I had to jump on a plane, I would have had to go to Nordstrom on the way to the airport to get a car seat at this point.
That's such a good like little lesson learned. Like, okay, this was like a trial run.
Yeah. So at that point, I was like, let me get a car seat. Let me get some gender neutral baby stuff. Like, let me just get a couple of things. And at that point, my mother-in-law was also so excited. She was like, let me throw you a baby shower. Let me throw you a baby shower. And I was like, yeah, sure. So she schedules it for July, towards the end of July. So she sends out the invitations. We make a baby registry. We do all these things.
Oh, that's sweet.
So she's super excited and we're getting cases every little bit. Some cases we say yes, some cases we say no. But, towards the end of June, like you start getting discouraged because you're like, okay, I've said yes a couple of times and like, why isn't anybody picking me? Like you can't take it personal, but you take it personal because you're like, why don't they like us?
For sure.
Like, what about us don't they like? And you're not going to change something based on their opinion because like you want people to want you and to love you for your authentic self. But you can't help but be like, why not us? So I had even called Courtney and I was like, is there something I'm doing wrong? Like, is there something with our profile book? Is there something with our letters that I'm sending? Like, is there something that I could do better? And she said, no, you're doing great. Just trust the process. And of course, like some people, it takes a whole year. It takes more than a year.
Yeah.
And I'm only 2 months in, and I'm just like, poor, pitiful me. And which is not the correct thing to do, but I
Right.
could, I,
Like,
you know what?
I
I
would
have
say
the
you're
right to throw
two.
myself a pity party.
Yeah, you do,
A
because
lot.
while you're 2 months in, you're years
Yeah.
into like getting to that point.
Yeah. So, my best friend was getting married the week of July 4th. She was getting married on the 8th. And the week of the 4th, I was like, we're not going to get any cases because it's the holiday week, yada, yada. And my work had also just thrown me a baby shower. They were super sweet. They threw me a baby shower to get some more baby stuff. So we had a couple of extra things, and um, it was, I don't know what day it was. It was maybe like the 5th or the 6th. I had a case come across my phone, and it was a baby born case. And it's laid out all the information, and it was like, this agency is small. They're only going to take maybe like 3 or 4 families because they're very particular about finances, about debt, about all this stuff. And I like internally was like, "Ugh, okay, I'll say yes, because this seems like something that I would really love. And this case seems good. So like, let's just say yes." And so I sent my stuff. And I sent it to Courtney before I sent it. And I said, does this look good? Like, just tell me, like, do you think it looks good? And she said, it looks great. Fingers are crossed, praying for you. You're like, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And I send it. And the next day I get a text message from Courtney. And she said, hey, you're one of the families that they chose to interview. The agency's chosen to interview. So are you available tomorrow at this time?
Timing, like
gosh.
it's just so life.
Right?
I'm in a wedding the next day for my best friend, and I was like, yeah, I'm ready. I can do it. My husband gets COVID that same day.
Stop.
Stop.
So, um, I was like, okay, listen, this is our plan. I was like, I'm gonna go to the wedding. We're gonna do the fun wedding, pre-wedding festivities, get makeup done. You're gonna drive to the venue. We're gonna get in the car and we're gonna have this interview together. And he was like, okay, sounds great. Sounds good. And they told me that they were going to call at a specific time. They called like 30 minutes early.
Oh gosh.
So my husband wasn't there.
And you're at a wedding.
Yes.
At a wedding. It's July in Georgia. It's hot. The whole wedding venue is like busy. So there's nowhere I can go privately in the venue. So I'm
Yeah.
outside sweating.
Oh my gosh, no.
Dying. And my husband is on 3-way call. I have minimal service, and I'm like, this is perfect.
Like,
And you're
this is
just
a
wanting
disaster.
everything to be so perfect in that moment.
100%.
Nothing could be more wrong.
Yeah, this is great. Love this for me. And so they do the interview. They're asking about, because all these cases, there are different things to go along with them. So they're asking, are you comfortable with this? Well, what if this happens? And what if this? What would you do here? What's your support system like? All this stuff. And she's very dry. And we do the phone call, we end it, and Dylan.
So can you elaborate when you're doing it with the
the
birth mother or expected mother? I don't know if the baby's been born or
we're doing it with her agency.
Okay. So
the baby has been born. And they are interviewing families to present.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And there's only like 4 families that they presented to her. But they're interviewing so they could go up to her and say, hey, I talked to these people. They think this, stuff like that. So condense it for her a little bit.
Yeah.
So we do the phone call. She kind of asked me all my questions, which essentially is everything that's in the paperwork, but she just kind of wants to hear you explain it.
Right.
And we get off the phone call, and my husband's like, how do you think it went? And I was like, I think it went horrible. How do you think it went? Like,
because you're not in your headspace. You didn't have time to prepare. Yeah.
And one of the things that we were told again was like, you guys are just so young. You're so young.
How old
like,
are you at the time?
27.
That's young.
I know.
I was like,
That's like, I feel like a pretty average age that
Yeah.
people have kids.
Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, my mom has had 2 kids by this point. Okay. So,
Right.
Yeah.
so I heard that and I was immediately like, oh, they're not going to like us because we're too young. At this point, the young thing, I need to change my birth date because that's the it. That's where everything is going wrong is 1994 right now. So we have the wedding, everything is great, and they say, hey, you'll know your answer tomorrow. And I was like, okay. So the next day, I'm waiting, nothing. And I was like, I just wish they would send us the decline letter by now. Because
Right.
that's what they're going to do. I was like, they're going to send us like, so sorry, they went with someone else, like, yada, yada, try again next time. And that's what I'm telling my husband. I was like, I just want the letter. I just want to be able to just like put it past me because I'm anxious. I'm an anxious.
Sure.
And 7 o'clock rolls around and I was like, okay, they'll probably just send it at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to make dinner and we're just going to move past it. So I make dinner. I sit it on the table, about to take a bite to eat. And Courtney calls me. And there had been a case that day that she sent me and that I had questions about. So I was like, oh, she's calling me about that case that I had questions about. So I answer and I put it on speaker because my husband's right there. And I was like, hey. And she said, hey, where are you at? I said, I'm at home. And she said, are you sitting down? And I was like, yes. And she said, you and your husband were picked to be baby L's parents.
Oh my gosh,
I
stop.
don't know, like, how are you not crying? I'm
I
like,
would have lost it.
I am, don't worry.
yeah.
I sobbed, heaving sobs, couldn't get words out. She was like, call me back, and hung up. And I was like, Courtney,
You're like, we'll have
don't
this
you
moment with your
know?
husband.
Yeah.
And I was just like on my husband's lap, just like bawling. And I was like, somebody like says, like, we're parents, like we're someone's mom and dad.
So sweet.
And so I call her back and I was like, I'm okay enough to talk now. I can do it. And she said, okay, so here are the details. They're going to call you in about 30 minutes and they're going to talk through things with you. And they are in Alabama, which is just a hop away. I don't have to get on a plane. I don't have to check a bag. I don't have to do anything. She was like, but they're going to call you in 30 minutes and they're going to go over everything. I'm going to send you a bunch of emails with contact information, with match information, with all of this stuff. And I was like, great, perfect. So me and my husband are immediately like, we are not prepared still.
Yeah.
So we go up to the baby's room and we're like, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this. We're categorizing everything that we have, that we don't have. And at this point, we don't have a baby. We hadn't had like the big family baby shower. So I was like, okay, it's fine. Like we're still gonna get some of this stuff. So we don't need to like go crazy. And so the agency calls us and I told her name was Suzanne. I was like, I thought you hated me. And she said, no, I just have to be kind of like dry to people so that way they don't get like overly excited. And I said, like me, you're talking about me. And she said, yes. I said,
Oh.
so she tells me all the information. She tells me where baby is, which is in Alabama, and tells me kind of a little bit more about the birth mother, about kind of what they were looking for as far as openness, which you have open, you have semi-open, and you have closed. And closed adoptions really aren't a thing anymore, just because at the end of the day, you want what's best for your child. And open is best because you want that child to have access to any questions that they have that maybe you can't answer. So it was going to be semi-open, where they didn't want to meet us. Nobody wanted to talk with us. Nobody wanted to meet us, but they wanted letters and pictures once a month for the first year and then twice a year until she's 18. And that's what the agreement was. And so can you hear her? She's outside annoyed.
No. Oh.
So we get all this information. It's like 10 o'clock at night at this point, and I have to go to work the next day. And I was like, there's no way, because we technically have to get like a couple more checks and then we get to go down on Tuesday. So it's Wednesday. We get to go down on Tuesday.
Oh my gosh, how do you even wait?
Literally, I
Like,
cannot.
I went to work and I'm vibrating. It's 7 o'clock in the morning and it seems like I just chugged 2 energy. I am just like, oh, I can't hold it in.
yeah.
I'm trying to wait to at least tell my manager first before I tell all of my coworkers that are sitting there with me. And I said, I can't be here today. I have to go to Target. I have to
Like, I have
prepare
things to do. Yeah.
things to do. And she was like, totally fine.
Yeah.
Just
I'm getting
leave
a baby.
whenever you want to leave. Just go. And I said, I'll try and work half the day. And she said, okay. And so I like walked back into the room and I said, I have an announcement.
Oh.
And my coworkers were so excited. They were crying as well. And I said, I may not be present right here, but I'm certainly not going to be present at lunchtime. I'm leaving. And they were like, leave now, honestly. We don't want you here. You got to go do your thing.
Yeah.
And so me and my husband went to Target, bought the entire Target baby section. Even though we said we weren't going to, we were like, what if she needs this? And what if she needs this? And what about this and this and this? And so
Oh.
spent an obscene amount of money at Target and then made the trek to Birmingham, which was 3.5 hours. And the whole 3.5 hours, we were like, what do you think she's going to look like? Do you like the name that we picked out? What about her middle name? Like, what if we like the name that her birth mom chose? Like, what are we going to, just the whole 3.5 hours, we talked nonstop about her. And, we got there and met our agency, the Briar's agency. And they were so sweet. They were so kind. They were like, we want to frame your profile book because it's so gorgeous. And I was like, thank God somebody likes it. I was so worried. And they were like, we're going to meet you at the hospital. First go here and just get a check done. And, that be that. And we were like, okay. So we meet at the hospital and Suzanne like got stuck somewhere. And so we're sitting in the lobby of the hospital. We can't go up without her, but we're sitting there, both of us just like hands crossed, waiting on her for an extra like 45 minutes. And it was just like, she is somewhere above us, and we have to wait. And eventually Suzanne got there and she was in the NICU for a little bit. So we go up and we go in her NICU room and there she was. She was just perfect, laying there sleeping. And we just stared at her for a minute. And it like couldn't process. Both me and my husband were like glitched. We were like, this is our baby. And
That feeling.
Yeah.
one of the nurses before we came in was like, she just got some medicine, so maybe don't grab her right away. And I was like, yeah, of course. And then the other nurse was like, no, she's your baby, take her. And we were like, oh, but someone just told us not to. So messing up. And so after Suzanne and the nurses left, we were able to get her out. And my husband and I just started bawling, just absolutely bawling. And I like looked at my husband and I was like, your dad would have loved her. And
Gosh, so sweet.
I was like, your dad would have loved to meet her and all this other stuff. And we just sat there and we cried the whole day. We just sat in her room and it was this so small NICU room. And we just sat there and just held her and just sobbed. Every time a nurse came in, we were crying. And she was like, are you guys okay? And we were like, we're fine.
Crying 2 years after the experience on like a second hand.
Oh my goodness.
We're good. We're fine every single time. And our plan was because she was in the NICU, we didn't know when she was going to get discharged. We were like, okay, we're going to stay a day and then go home, get our stuff situated, come back. We're going to try and like do this in the most, I don't even know, the best way possible to make sure we're splitting our time properly. We got there, we saw her. We didn't want to leave. We didn't want to leave.
Sure. You're like, we're never leaving this girl.
We're never leaving.
Yeah.
But we unfortunately did not like plan for someone to watch our two dogs. And we lived like at the time, like an hour and some change away from all of our family. So we were like, we have to go back tonight, but now we're going to come back tomorrow instead of waiting an extra day. And sure enough, that's what we did. So we got there second week of July. And our baby shower was scheduled for July 23rd. So We had no idea when she was going to be discharged at that point. We were just taking it a day at a time. When we got there, her name was Lily,
Oh,
and we liked that a lot. Our last name is Lee, however, so like Lily Lee seemed a little odd. So I had picked out the name Briar years ago. When we first got married, I read it in a book and I was like, I love that name. If I ever have a daughter, I want to name her Briar.
Mhm.
And my husband agreed. So that's the only name we had. We're planning to do another adoption. We still don't have any other names.
yeah.
And that's the only name we've ever agreed on. And we got there and Dylan was like, I like Lily, but like, what if we lengthened it? So we decided on Lillian. So her name is Briar Lillian Lee.
Oh, I love that. That's really
so
pretty.
sweet, that is.
So we just went back and forth. We slept in the NICU. We met some incredible nurses. One of the nurses ended up being on for 4 shifts back to back to back, which was horrible for her. Horrible.
Yeah.
However, she ended up almost living in that tiny room with us because she was like, "You're new parents, aren't you?" And we were like, "Can you tell?" And she said, "Yes, and I'm going to help you." And she coached us through everything. Things that popped up because of the reason she was in the NICU. She helped us walk through it. At 3 o'clock in the morning, when we were sleep deprived because of the machines going off constantly, she would come in, sneak in when we're all asleep, take Briar and feed her and soothe her so we could sleep. Because at that point, we were like, she knew we were driving. She knew we were doing all these things. And she was like, I grabbed her. You guys sleep. It's okay. I'm here for you. And so it's getting to be like the last week of July, and we get her discharge date, which is July 23rd.
Wow.
And it's the same day as her baby shower.
Just
And
All of it, yeah.
that's timing. And what's wild is Briar's birthday is July 3rd. My birthday is October 3rd, and our wedding anniversary is September 23rd, and she was discharged on July 23rd.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah,
so
so
sweet.
the numbers are coinciding, but we were like, we need all of this stuff at her baby shower because the thing with adoptions is you, especially in a different state, you have this thing called ICPC where you have to wait for the paperwork to process before you can take your child across state lines. So you have to stay in the state that they were born until that paperwork processes. So we were like, we need all of this stuff at this baby shower, but she's getting discharged the same day. So we talked with our nurse and was like, can you discharge her in the afternoon? And she was like, of course. So that morning we had our baby shower in Georgia with all of our friends and family. And a lot of them didn't quite know yet. So we got to announce at the baby shower that we were then going to be on our way to pick up said baby.
Oh, that's so amazing. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
special.
Yeah. And so we gathered up a ton of stuff from the baby shower and left before it was over and drove straight to Alabama
To go
and
get
picked her.
Pearl.
Up.
That's so sweet.
Yep. And so we then stayed at a hotel for 4 or 5 days until they processed the paperwork. And then we got to come home. And here we are. We're in a different house, but yeah, there's that.
And she is 20 months old now.
20 months old. Yeah, she's a little ham.
Oh, she's
my
stunning.
gosh,
Yeah,
she's
your whole
so
family is so
cute.
cute.
Thank you. She's a cutie. She, oddly enough, has the personality mix of me and my husband. I mean, just like it's wild. I constantly am like, how did you not come out of me? I don't quite understand.
Yeah.
But she's got reddish hair, curly, is starting to curl up. It's wild. I'll see if she can come in here in just a minute. I don't know what she's doing.
Well, that is like the most beautiful
gosh.
story. I don't think I've cried that much.
That many times during one of our recordings. That was
This
literally chills.
I know. And I want to ask you, because it sounds like you and your husband, like you were number one, it sounds like you're going to do it again. So like you've had a really positive experience. I think for listeners, what advice would you give somebody that maybe is going through infertility and they're at the place where they're going to need to take they're looking at a different route than just like the standard IVF process?
Yeah, I would definitely say to just look for the signs. I don't know what someone may believe in, but the universe or God is going to give you signs about what is best for your family and your path and your journey. And you have to be open to the signs. And I'm one of those people that would have continued IVF and just been like, one more time, one more time, one more time, one more time. But at what point do you step back and you say, I'm doing this all to what? Be pregnant for maybe a second because maybe my body's just not able to carry a pregnancy, but also like step back and say, what is the most important thing to you? What is the most important thing right now to you? Is it to be pregnant? And if it is, if that's part of your journey, that is okay. But if it's more along the lines of like, you know what, it's not really that important to me. I really just want more of like to have a family with the person that I love.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you
Grow
should.
a little human being and be,
Yeah.
totally get
Yeah.
that.
So that's probably what I would say. But I would be that person that would also be like, maybe one more time, maybe one more time. But I just felt like there was a different calling for my life. And my husband and I have actually sat down and we've reevaluated again and been like, should we do IVF again? Should we try it again?
Yeah.
Should we try embryo adoption? And every single time we've been like, you know what, let's think on it and then come back. And every time we've both came back and been like, no, it's just not, we don't feel like it's for us. And if we get pregnant naturally by some miracle, praise be, you know, that's great. That's in God's design for us. But if not, we're okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
love
that's so beautiful. I love your whole story and how it just led you all to Briar. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. I definitely, I ended up being a stay-at-home mom, so I stopped working, but I actually had to help counsel some patients that had a hard time stopping. And I had to be like, what is your end goal here?
Yeah.
What is like, you can breastfeed without having to be pregnant. There's medication you can have to do that.
Right.
Not do that. I did not need the added stress on myself, but you can do that. So like, if you're looking to be a mother and go through motherhood, is it important for you to do this? Is it important for you to have those two genetics? If it is, by all means, keep going, but you need to reevaluate your plan. But if it's not, look into some other options.
Mhm.
And I've had patients reach out to me through Facebook. They found me somehow. I don't know how. And they've been like, I think I'm done. And I want to know how you went through and got your daughter. And I have sat down and I've been like, I'm happy to tell you whatever you want to know.
I love
So
that.
Your story is so inspiring. I'm very excited for listeners to hear it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.